that are described in Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's recite this verse. Shri Shukavacha
श्रीशुकौवाच
Atra Sargo Visargascha
अत्र सर्गो विसर्गश्च
Sthanam Poshanamutayah
स्थानं पोषणमुपयः
Manmantareshanukatha
मन्वन्तरेषु कथा
Nirodho Muktirashrayah.
निरोधो मुक्तिराश्रयः
One more time. Shri Shukavacha
श्रीशुक उवाच
Atra Sargo Visargascha
अत्र सर्गो विसर्गश्च
Anam Pushanamutayah
स्थानं पोषणमुदयः
Manmantareshanukatha
मन्वन्तरेषानुकथा
Nirodho Muktirashrayah.
निरोधो मुक्तिराश्रयः
One time. Shri Shukavacha
श्रीशुक उवाच
Atra Sargo Visargascha
अत्र सर्गो विसर्गश्च
Anam Poshanamutayah
स्थानं पोषणमुदयः
Manmantareshanukatha
मन्वन्तरेषानुकथा
Nirodho Muktirashrayah.
निरोधो मुक्तिराश्रयः
Let's do some voluntary recitations.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Shri Shuka Uvacha
श्रीशुक उवाच
Atra Sargo Visargascha
अत्र सर्गो विसर्गश्च
Tanam Poshanamutayaha
स्थानं पोषणमुदयः
Manvantareshanukatha
मन्वन्तरेषानुकथा
Nirodho Muktirashrayah
निरोधो
Muktirashrayah.
मुक्तिराश्रयः
Thank you, sir.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Shri Shukavacha
Shri
Shri
Shukavacha
Sukha Uvacha
Atra Sargo Visargascha
Atra Sargo Visargascha
Sthanam Poshanam Utayah
स्थानं
Poshanamudayah
Manvantara Shanu Katha
Manvantareshanukatha
Nirodho Muktir Ashrayaha.
निरोधो
Mukti Ashrayah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. One more.
I can
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Go
Hare
ahead, Mataji.
go ahead Mataji, please go ahead.
Thank you. Shri Shuka Uvacha
श्रीशुक उवाच
Atra Sargo Visargascha
Atra Sargo
सर्गो
Visargascha
विसर्गश्च
Stanam Poshanam Utayah
स्थानं पोषणमुदयः
Manvantare Sanukatha
मन्वन्तरेषानुकथा
Nirodho Muktir Ashrayah.
निरोधो मुक्तिराश्रयः
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. So this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam talks about the 10 subject matters of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Shukadev Goswami, this chapter is Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. So these 10 aspects that is being described covers the entire things that needs to be covered, not only in Bhagavatam, in our lives, and more than that we know in our lives. So it is so much encompassing. So first thing that it discusses Sarga. In this Srimad, Atra means in this Srimad Bhagavatam, here it says, Sargaha means statement of the creation. It says statement of the creation of the universe. That is creation. Visarga means sub-creation. Cha and also Sthanam, the planetary systems, will describe more. Poshanam, Poshanam means the way to, what do you say, the protection or to subsist certain thing, like palan karna. So that's those kind of, in Hindi it is Utayah, the creative impetus. Manvantara is about the Manus. Isha Anukatha, and this is very obvious, the science of God. Nirodha is going back home, back to Godhead, but Nirodha is the annihilation time. That is Nirodha. Mukti is liberation, and Ashraya is the ultimate samam bonam. It is knowing about who is the Ashraya, whom we take shelter with, as the Supreme Lord. So let's read the translation and then we can discuss each of the 10 division a little bit.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Translation. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, subcreation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of Manus, the science of God, returning home, back to Godhead, liberation, and the Samam Bonam. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mother. So it starts with the creation of the universe, that is the Sarga. So normally the reciters of Srimad Bhagavatam have utilized 3 different methods to explain these 10 subjects. Namely, first is called as Shrutena, that is by Vedic reference, or by direct explanation, that is called Arthena. And third is by summary explanations given by the great sages, that is by Anjasa. So by these 3 different methods, Shrutena, Arthena and Anjasa, this has been defined. So now first thing out of 10 is the Sarga. Sarga means the creation or the elemental creation or the details of what are the elements that was being there to create this material universe. So it is defined as Bhuta Matendriya Dhyam Janma Sarga Udahritaha. It means the elemental creation of 16 principles of matter. So later in this chapter, this shloka will also come. Namely, what are the 16 principles of matter? The 5 gross elements, which are Panchabhutas, the 5 objects of sense perception, that is the Tanmatras, and the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, that is Gyanendriyas. So what are the 5 gross elements? Earth, water, fire, air and ether. The 5 objects of sensual perceptions are sound, form, taste, smell and touch. 5 knowledge acquiring senses are Gyanendriyas are eyes, ears, nose, tongue and skin. And what is the last one? The 16th one is the mind. So mind is, together with the mind, these 16 principles are created by the first Purusha incarnation, Mahavishnu. And within these 16 principles, there are 8 subtle principles also which are there, so which makes it to 24. So this is also a subject matter of Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga is just to divide the material elements, like the elemental division, as you can say, is the Sarga. And what is Visarga? Visarga is the second level. It is defined as Brahmano Guna Vaishamyad Visarga Paurushaha Smrita. It means the secondary creation by Brahma carried out through the interaction of the 3 modes of nature is Visarga. So how he does? He manipulates all the 16 original principles of material existence. That's why he's called a secondary creator, because those 16 elements were created by the Purusha incarnation. And this is Brahmaji is using those 16 principles to create, and with the interaction of the 3 modes of material nature, Sattva, Raja and Tama, Lord Brahma carries out the subsequent creation, more properly described as an assembling of the universal ingredients. So that is the second part, which is sub-creation or Visarga. So with the Sarga and then Visarga. Then third is Sthanam. The Sthanam, Acharya describe as Sthitir Vaikuntha Vijaya. The real position is to get the Vaikuntha position. Not as the Lord himself, but as a servant of the Lord. But to define it according to the universe, the entire creation of Lord is is to enable the conditioned souls to satisfy their material desire, to lord it over the material, because that's what nature, because we use our false ego to lord it over. We want to be God ourselves, because of that propensity is there. So as such, according to their desires, the Lord creates a suitable situation or sthanam for them to dwell in. Within the universe, these situations can be divided into 14 main categories, not 4. They are known as bhuvanas. So Chauda Bhuvan that we say, or planetary systems. And in those 14 planetary systems, there are 8,400,000 species of jivas that live. And from the topmost sthanam, which is the Brahma Loka, to the lowermost, which is the Patal Loka. There are 7 types of Patal, but the lowest one is the Patala. Everything are destructible. Abrahma bhuvana loka punaravartino arjuna. Mamupetya tu kaunteya punarjanmana vidyate. So, but how one can become ahead of it? Mamupetya, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Only by attaining to our eternal constitutional situation, the spiritual realm of Vaikuntha can be achieved. So that is the sthanam. But we can define as planetary system as we define. But the real sthanam is going back to Godhead. So our position, to have that situation, to be properly situated. The next thing is poshanam. Poshanam means protection by the Lord. So poshanam tad anugraha. That is defined by the acharyas. Protection is the causeless mercy of the Lord. It means. So poshanam can be defined in 2 ways according to the mentality of the living entity. For the conditioned souls, poshanam refers to material maintenance. It is Lord who fulfills the desires of all living entities. For the devotees of the Lord, however, poshanam refers to the Lord's causeless mercy and protection both. Protection plus Lord's causeless mercy. Because why? Because they are engaged in serving the Lord in a favorable way. So then what happens? They get the causeless mercy of the Lord. Material protection means protection from hunger is the lowest form of protection, which the Lord offers to the conditional living entities. For the devotees, the Lord's protection is protection from the illusion of Maya. The Lord gives the devotee the strength to always remember Him and engage in His devotional service. So there are 2 levels here. So but we can understand poshanam is protection by the Lord. That is, first we talked about sarga, visarga, then sthanam, and then the poshanam. The fifth is utayaha. Utayaha is the creative impetus. The verse which, the phrase which defines it is utayaha karma vasana. The impetus for activity utaya is the desire for fruitive work. So that is the desire which actually keeps us moving. The conditioned soul forgets that the Lord is his eternal protector and maintainer, and thus he has an impetus of fruitive activity for one's self-maintenance. And this desire for fruitive activity is the driving force behind all the work that is being done. So that's why Utaya is being defined. But what is the true impetus for a devotee? A true impetus of a living entity or a devotee should be to go back to Godhead, to the supreme abode of Vaikuntha, and activities performed in that direction from the right path of work. So see how there are 2 levels of understanding when one comes to the devotional path and one not, in terms of all the different aspects that Bhagavatam describes. The next one is Manvantara. Manvantara is the change of Manus, as is defined here. Manvantarani Sad Dharma. Why the Manus are changing? The reign of Manus, Manvantaras, are for establishing the eternal religious principles. So these Manus, in one day of Brahma, 14 Manus change. So imagine in 1 year how many, and then in 100 years, that is the age of Brahma, how many Manus are there? But Manu is considered as the father of the mankind. They are Prajapatis or the progenitors empowered to guide the human race towards self-realization. Manu provides the revealed scriptures to mankind, which regulates their activities in a manner that will be good for their eternal welfare. So there is the Manu Samhita, which tells all those codes of conduct. When the living entities accept such a regulated path, the Lord provides them with all protection by which they may attain their constitutional situation in Vaikuntha. So that's why it is required. Thus, the desire to go back to Godhead and regulated activity performed to achieve that goal form the proper path of action. So Manvantara is reign of Manus, which actually are for the establishing the eternal religious principles. Then comes the science of God, Ishanukatha. It is self-evident. Ishanukatha is defined as the science of God. There is actually a shloka, big shloka here. Avataranu charitam haresh chasyanu vartinam pumsam ishakataha prokta. The science of God, Ishanukatha, describes the incarnation of the personality of Godhead, his different activities together with the activities of his great devotees. So that you have seen in Bhagavatam, there are about Lord's pastimes and also his devotees' pastimes like Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruv Maharaj, and also different avatars are also defined. So many of them, like many devotees, like even Vritrasura was a devotee there. About the Gajendra Katha, Gajendra Moksha Katha, there are so many devotees being defined. So entire material creation is for the ultimate purpose of living entities, salvation. And that's why when the conditioned soul utilizes the creation for secondary purposes such as material fruitive activity, the Lord incarnates to reclaim these forgetful souls. So that's how this Ishanukatha comes. So that's why hearing the topics of the Lord and his devotees, which constitutes the science of God, should be given respectful oral reception. It is recommended. Next is returning home back to Godhead, which is Nirodha, which is also defined as the dissolution. Nirodha Shayanu Shayanam Atmanaha Saha Shaktivhi. There is a verse which tells the merging of the living entity along with his conditioned living tendency with the mystic lying down of Mahavishnu is called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation or Nirodha. So when Brahma's time ends, there is winding of the past times. So what happens is, as we normally we have like different kinds of bodies. We have gross body and subtle body, two bodies. The subtle body is made up of mana, buddhi, ahankara, which is mind, intelligence, and false ego. So when everything ends, if a person is not devoted, then he has a subtle body, and the subtle body has those impressions. It goes back to Mahavishnu and stays there. And when again another creation happens, then it takes another body and continues from there. But a person who had gone into the devotional path and has perfected, he has lost his subtle body. He goes back to the spiritual realm. So that's how it is there. So that's why going back to Godhead is defined here. So all the living entities along with their conditional tendencies or vasanas merge into the body of Mahavishnu to await another creation or another opportunity to take up the science of God. Though the physical bodies are given up at this time, the subtle bodies, Sukshma Shariras, remain within the living entities along with their latent desires. This is indicated by the words Atmanaha Saha Shaktivhi. So that is what there. Then the next one is Mukti or liberation. And Mukti is defined as Muktir Hitva Anyatha Rupam Swarupena Vyavasthiti. It means liberation is the permanent situation of the form of the living entity after he gives up the changeable gross and subtle material bodies. So when one gives up his gross and subtle, it means that is the liberation stage. But even at liberation stage, if there is no attraction to the Supreme Lord, then there is always a chance of coming back or dropping back. So that's why bhakti is considered superior to mukti. And a very famous saint, Bilomangal Thakur, says in his, I think, Krishna Karnamrita, yes, Krishna Karnamrita, he says that it is the situation of mukti, that mukti stands with folded hands in front of a person who is actually performing the bhakti to the Supreme Lord. So that is how it is there. So mukti is also being discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam. And then the next is the Samam Bonam, which is the Ashraya, who is the supreme shelter. And this is the supreme, it is talking about the supreme absolute truth, who is non different than the Supreme Lord Krishna. The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being or the Supreme Soul, is the supreme source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the supreme shelter, the absolute truth. And the absolute truth has been defined in various ways. Like it starts with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The Bhagavatam starts with that. And then the first verse is there. The first verse discusses about how the Lord is Swatantra, Swarat, Tene Brahma Hidayadi Kavai. So all those things are nicely defined. So that is the 10th and the Samambona. So what we see in all these 10 things encompass the entire Bhagavatam, the subject matter of Bhagavatam, these 10 different items. So that is, and what is to take away for us, that we have to, again, the same thing that Prabhupada also says in all different purports, to do progress in the path of the Bhakti Yoga, to go beyond all this and get to the Samam Bonam, which is the Supreme Lord's service. Not become like God, but become a servant of the Lord and restore oneself to the Swarupa, or the constitutional position of the Lord, constitutional position of the living entity. Yes. So yeah, we can now pause here and have discussions. I know there may be detailed discussion in the Bhagavad Prabhamu series that Mataji gave on these. There is a pictorial description also.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Prabhu, you are defining each term in detail with Sanskrit explanation also. Where is it? Where is that from?
Yeah, I actually looked at this in this is from the Puranas, but it is compiled well in ISKCON Desire Tree. There is a site. I can send you the link. I will send the link in the group.
Okay,
You can see all the details that I discussed.
thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.